Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a war drama movie called Beasts of No Nation. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in an unspecified country in West Africa, where we see a 12-year-old boy named Agu playing with his friends. He then brings a television frame and offers to sell it to a man, calling it an imaginary TV. He and his friends perform various acts behind the frame, like kung fu and dance. However, the man refuses to purchase such a useless item and sends them away. This disheartens the young boy, but he doesn't give up so easily. Agu approaches a soldier next and starts pitching his imaginary TV as usual. Luckily, the soldier agrees to buy it and offers them food in exchange. Later, we learn that their country is at war, and Agu's village is in a buffer zone protected by peacekeeping forces. His father used to be a teacher, but now he's the sector chief and always allows refugees from surrounding areas to stay on his land. Meanwhile, his mother stays at home and cares for Agu and his siblings, which includes his older brother and little sister. In the evening, as his small family is eating dinner, Dad notices the TV is missing its frame. As a result, Agu immediately flees the house and sleeps outside to avoid punishment. Days later, the villagers learn that the government has collapsed, with military-aligned rebels seizing control of the country. As the rebel forces attack the village, many people flee to the capital for safety. Agu's father also decides to send his family there, while he and his oldest son remain behind. Mom is very unhappy with the decision, as she doesn't want the family to be separated, but Dad manages to convince her, saying that he needs to defend their homeland. The next day, a mass evacuation begins, and many villagers flee to the capital. Agu's father brings his wife and children to the bus station, but the majority of the vehicles are full, and people are desperate. The driver says he can only take the woman and the little girl, so Agu must stay behind. The father argues with him and offers to pay a large sum of money, but the driver refuses. In the end, only the mother and little sister end up leaving, while Agu stays behind with his dad and brother. Days later, the village is caught up in a battle between government forces and rebels. During the shootout, Agu's family and a few other men manage to hide inside a shed while avoiding gunfire. Unfortunately, government troops soon discover their hideout and apprehend them. The soldiers then accuse them of being rebels, which Agu's father denies. He says that he's the sector chief of the village and just stayed behind to protect their land. Unfortunately, the soldiers don't believe them and accuse them of being enemy spies. His father is then shot and killed, and his eldest son also suffers the same fate. The only one who manages to escape is Agu, and he somehow makes it to the jungle. He then wanders the forest alone, eating whatever edibles he can find. After a few days, he gets accidentally caught up in a rebel ambush. As he ponders what to do next, someone hits him and knocks him out. When he awakens, he sees a group of rebel soldiers, mostly children and teenagers. It turns out they are from a group called NDF, which stands for Native Defense Forces. They apprehend Agu and decide to punish him, assuming he is a government spy. To decide his fate, they bring him to their leader, known as the Commandant. When the Commandant asks who caught the kid, a mute boy named Strika signals that he did. Following this, the Commandant summons his subordinate 2IC and asks what should be done with Agu. 2IC claims that he's only a boy and appears harmless, but the Commandant disagrees. He states that even a small child has eyes to see and hands to pull a trigger. He then questions Agu about who he is and what he's doing there. The boy nervously describes how government soldiers attacked his village and killed his family. Hearing this, the Commandant sympathizes with the boy and announces that Agu will now join the NDF. He promises to train him to be a soldier so that he can avenge his family's death. The poor boy has no option but to comply to save his life. Afterward, the group begins marching forward, and Agu is assigned to carry their weapons. They soon arrive at their camp and begin eating, but don't give anything to Agu. When he asks for some food, a guy named Preacher laughs at him, saying he won't get anything since he isn't a warrior yet. Instead, he orders the boy to stand up and salute them until he asks him to stop. Meanwhile, Strika is summoned to the Commandant's quarters, which he reluctantly obliges to. Over the next few days, Agu and the other kids go through brutal training to join the NDF. The Commandant also feeds them propaganda, claiming that the NDF is gradually winning the war and that they will be reunited with their families soon. The boys are tortured with burning wood, beaten, cut with sharp blades, and buried in pits. During this time, Agu forms a bond with Strika, since they are the youngest and share the same age. After some training, they leave the camp and plan a surprise attack on government vehicles crossing a bridge. They kill everyone in the attack, except one man, who survives the gunfire. The NDF then captures him and proceeds to torture him. The man begs begs and cries, claiming that he's just an engineer who has come to repair the bridge. He pleads to be released, but the commandant has no mercy. He hands a sword to Agu and orders him to kill the man. This terrifies the young boy as he has never hurt anyone in his life. However, the commandant begins to manipulate him, saying that this man was a part of the group that killed his family. Upon hearing this, Agu musters all of his courage and strikes the man on the head. It injures him severely, but he's still alive, so Strika joins in on the act, and the two boys repeatedly hit the man until he finally dies. The commandant is impressed by Agu's actions and orders 2IC to give him a gun. The boy accepts it, but his actions disgust him so much that he vomits on the ground. The next day, they march to a nearby village and slaughter many government soldiers there. They then celebrate by performing a ritual and taking drugs. Later, the commandant summons Agu to his room and states that he's impressed by his progress. He also informs him that they intend to march to the capital soon, where he will be able to see his mother. This excites Agu, and the commandant starts to inhale some drugs. He then lies down on the bed and asks the boy to make him happy. Sometime later, Agu leaves the room, visibly distressed after being assaulted by the commandant. Strika immediately approaches his friend and silently consoles him, as he has been through a similar situation. The next day, Agu seems a bit absent and is having a hard time processing what happened to him. Seeing this, Preacher tries to cheer him up and gives him some drugs, which makes him really high. In the afternoon, the group arrives in a village and begins terrorizing the locals. They enter a house and discover a woman and her little daughter hiding in a corner. Agu, who is still high on drugs, hugs the woman and calls her mother, but he soon realizes that he was just tripping and she isn't his mom. He then notices Strika and a few boys beating the little girl and eventually killing her. Meanwhile, the mother is being assaulted by Preacher. The sight disgusts Agu so much that he shoots the woman to spare her the pain. Shortly after, the commandant receives a letter from the Supreme Commander named Goodblood. It turns out that Goodblood has summoned the group to the rebel headquarters to meet with him. The commandant then gathers his soldiers and tells them to prepare to leave. He especially tells Strika and Agu to stick close to him because he cares about them. The following day, the group arrives at Goodblood's office. The commandant becomes impatient with his superior for not ordering an attack on the capital. He suggests they proceed, but Goodblood informs him that their plans have changed and they will no longer attack the capital. He also reveals that the commandant is not being promoted as he had hoped, but rather being removed from his position. Instead, 2IC will be the new leader, and the commandant will be assigned to a staff position under him. Hearing this, 2IC tries to thank Goodblood, but the commandant interrupts and orders him to leave. In the evening, he takes his group to a brothel, stating that he wants to celebrate 2IC's promotion. The latter requests permission to leave so he can check on other units, but the commandant refuses. After this, all the soldiers, except Agu and Strika, choose a woman to go to have fun with them. Shortly after, Strika falls asleep while Agu stares at a waitress with interest. Suddenly, they are all startled by a gunshot in another room. The soldiers then bring in 2IC, who has been severely injured by a gunshot. It turns out that a prostitute accidentally shot him while playing with a gun. 2IC accuses the commandant of orchestrating this, but the latter pretends to be innocent. The prostitute who shot 2IC tries to flee, but Agu shoots her. Meanwhile, the brothel owner is also shot by Strika. In the following scene, Agu is seen sniffing narcotics, implying that he has become addicted. He then goes to check on the injured 2IC, who whispers with his last breath that everything they did was for nothing. After 2IC passes away, Agu is left feeling angry and upset. The commandant also pretends to be devastated and expresses how much 2IC meant to him. Afterward, a small funeral is held for 2IC, during which the commandant declares Supreme Commander Goodblood their new enemy. He urges the soldiers to stop waiting for Goodblood's orders and start acting on their own. Later, while they are resting, they are suddenly awakened by a missile attack. During the commotion, many of their soldiers are killed, leaving the group extremely vulnerable. After the gunfire subsides, the group prepares to leave, but Strika is reluctant to move. Agu checks on him and is shocked to discover that he's been shot in the chest. He then carries his friend, hoping they can reach a village to treat his wounds, but shortly after, Strika passes away on his back. Agu is devastated by his death and screams over his body, pleading for him to awaken. However, the other soldiers manage to calm him down and take him away from there. Following this, the remaining members of the group seek refuge in a gold mine, hoping to find gold to pay for supplies. But as time passes, their ammunition runs out, leaving them unable to defend themselves against invading enemy forces. Agu Agu speaks with the commandant about this situation, but the latter tells him how much he cares for him and considers him a son. He then asks Agu to take care of him as a son would take care of his father. As they speak, Preacher arrives and rallies the soldiers to abandon their positions and surrender to the UN. He warns them that if they stay, they will starve to death or be killed. The commandant refuses to let them go, claiming they will die within weeks or be imprisoned. He also states that even if they return to their village, their families won't accept them because of their war crimes. This results in a heated argument between them, and Preacher even points a gun at the commandant. However, the latter is aware that there are no more bullets left. Agu also aims his gun at the commandant, who feels betrayed by his actions. He eventually lets them go, but warns them that they will regret it when they are poor and starving in the middle of nowhere. The soldiers then depart, and as Agu follows them, the commandant looks at him with a hurt expression. Shortly after, the group encounters some official UN soldiers and surrenders to them. Days later, Agu and the young soldiers are sent to a missionary school in a safe part of the country. However, due to the long war, Agu feels uneasy in the peaceful environment and is unable to fit in with the other children. He suffers from drug withdrawal and frequently has nightmares about his past. Meanwhile, Preacher is also having trouble adjusting and believes the commandant was correct. He eventually runs away from the school to rejoin the war. In the final scene, Agu talks to a school counselor who tries to get him to open up. Agu responds that he has done some terrible things but refuses to go into detail. He is afraid that she won't understand him and will think of him as some kind of beast. So, he tells her about how he used to be a good boy and was raised by a loving family. The movie then ends as we see Agu finally joining the other boys to swim and play in the ocean. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.